right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the first Scientificus Environmentalist podcast. I am your host, Jesse Deffler. I'm here with my good pal, Pat Boyle. Say hi to people, Patty.
Hey, what's going on? Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. So, as you know, one of my courses this semester at Johns Hopkins has been a course regarding the Deep Ecology movement. And I sent you the 8 points of Deep Ecology, the platform, basically the core principles for the movement. Now, as I've been learning this semester, Deep Ecology really is a way of thinking about the human experience as part of the environment, one part of the environment, one part of the food chain, not rising above that. In essence, it is thinking about human nature as one particular strand in the web of life, as opposed to humans being above or outside of nature as a source of all value. So, me and you, we've known each other for a long time. For those of you who don't know me, I grew up in Central Jersey in a small town named South Plainfield, along with Patrick, and this is just kind of like old times doing some school projects together, huh?
Yeah. This one probably means a lot more in terms of its purpose than the other ones, but still fun nonetheless.
Yeah, we made some some ridiculous group projects in high school, but this one definitely a little more close to heart, especially for me. I really enjoyed this class, so let's kind of get into it a little bit here. We grew up in the suburbs, and now we live in Hoboken, which is obviously a city, while a small city, still very, very urban. Not many large parks, not much greenery. When do you think the last time you really got out and connected with nature and were in that environment?
Yeah, not a lot. We do have a couple of parks in Hoboken, but at the same time, a lot of it, it's kind of like I like to call it a very small New York City. It's only a mile and a half square.
Six suburb, right?
Yeah. But yeah, no, at the same time, I know Hoboken does a lot to try to preserve, its parks and Mother Nature, if you will, to use a broad term. But yeah, it's not often, and I feel like that's becoming a trend, really for the modern world. Less open space, more buildings on top of each other. We've seen what Manhattan has become outside of Central Park. There's not a whole lot of, greenery, again, to use a broad term. So it's definitely not as common as it used to be.
Yeah, no, and that's really what this course kind of was centered around, right? What the movement has centered around is the fact that we've gotten so disremoved or unremoved from nature as a society, and we don't connect with it the same way as maybe our ancestors did. So that really brings me to my next point, and that is the idea of religion connecting to nature. And you and I grew up going to Catholic church. Obviously, I wouldn't say either of us are relatively religious at this point.
No.
But ancient religions, indigenous religions, had much more of a regard for nature and the environment around them. Really intrinsic to the values that they followed. So, growing up in the religion that we did, are there any examples you have of connections you made between the teachings of that religion and nature? Do you feel like it was left out completely? Do you feel like it centered more around human beings being the utmost power in the world, besides God, of course?
Yeah. I think for the most part, just the only thing that kind of would tie religion and nature together is the fact that the whole thing, God created the earth and God created animals, and God was very peaceful and one with nature, and loved animals just as much as he loved humans. That's like when I was growing up, I was like, oh, don't, like, even though I was scared of spiders, I was like, oh, don't kill a spider because God created it, so why that wouldn't be the right thing to do. That's really
it's
all I
more-
kind of took away from growing up
It's
under
a little more
Christianity.
Jain than it is Christian, though. Yeah, and to go against that a little bit, we also have stories like the Great Flood and Noah's Ark, where God wiped out everything, including nature, as a result of human activity. But do you have any lessons or knowledge rooted in religion that was gained by an understanding and a connection with the environment?
I wouldn't even say religious. I would just say growing up in grade school, we were taught like, our ecological behavior should be to preserve Mother Nature and preserve Earth. And, when climate change and the idea behind it really started to, open people's eyes, it was like, all right, don't litter because it's bad for the Earth. And, very simple stuff. But, as we've gotten older and learned how big our carbon footprint is, I think, and, just how much impact each effect we have from one human, effect to an entire corporation or an entire society as a whole.
Yeah, and so to go into the 8 points of the Deep Ecology platform a little bit, and specifically pointing you to number 4, the flourishing of human life and cultures is compatible with sustainably smaller human populations, and then the flourishing of non-human life requires a small human population. So obviously the human population is bigger than it's ever been. Reducing that population comes with obviously ethical questions, and it's not something we really pursue. Do you think it's possible to reduce human population, or do you think we're going to reduce the population naturally? I mean, Pew Research has population growth leveling out at 2100, the year 2100. Around the same time, coincidentally, some think that we're going to hit to the 2-degree line, which if we don't reduce emissions, or if emissions aren't contained, the 2-degree line is 2 degrees Celsius warmer global temperatures than the pre-industrial era. So do you think it's possible to reduce human population growth? Do you think that's something that we should pursue? Is it unethical?
I mean, I don't think it's unethical. I think, rapid population growth. I mean, we're already seeing it. One, you mentioned the temperature increase. I mean, we're seeing record high heat waves across the entire world in the last couple of years here. England set a record high for temperature over a 2-day period. We've had scorching heat waves here this entire summer here in the Northeast. And, I think we just can't keep going at a pace of population growth that we've been going at. I mean, you see how many countries now are just totally grossly overpopulated.
Yeah.
There's no housing, and people are being pushed out of housing. Everything is becoming more expensive, obviously, because there's so many people on the planet and in small populations like we live here in Hoboken.
Yeah, but how do you possibly tell people to
Have less
kids? I don't know that you can. I mean, I believe it was China for a little while had the 1 or 2 child rule. That didn't really work out too well for them. I mean, China's population is expected to, or population growth is expected to collapse over the next few decades. They have a lot of young single people, especially men. I don't think that. I mean, how do you even implement something?
Well, I think humans we're always we act off of incentives, right? So I feel like you're seeing it now. The cost of living has gone up exponentially, and I feel like it's more so than the cost of resources and the income that we're making as a society. So I think just off incentives, people are having less kids because it's too damn expensive.
It's too expensive.
It's too expensive to have 3, 4
Here, me
kids.
and you are sitting in our late 20s, living in an apartment together.
So there's a lot of single men. I don't plan on
Yeah.
having kids anytime
Yeah,
soon.
no marriage, no kids for us over here. Way behind where our parents were at our age.
Yeah, I mean it was normal. You were late if you weren't having kids by 25, and then I feel like 20 years ago it was like okay, most people are having kids 26, 27, and now like I don't envision so many people in our age and our generation having kids before 30. Like I don't think that's odd at all to have kids before. To have kids after 30 now.
Yeah, I mean, by the time my father was my age, he had, I think, 2 kids, a house, a car.
And that's how it was.
No college degree. It was a completely different world.
As technology has expanded, more people on the earth, more industry, more carbon footprint, to keep throwing that term around everything we do on a day-to-day basis. Millions of cars, way more than ever. Just really just creating so much of an impact on the way we live that everything that goes along with that, the cost of living, it's not sustainable. And I think if telling people to do that is one thing, but not being able to raise 3-4 kids on basically minimum wage jobs between one or two parents, that has created a huge change, I think, in the way that we're living and the way that we're going to live.
Yeah, and I mean, the way that we're living is so...
It's like breakneck speed.
It is breakneck speed, and it's technologically driven. It's urban driven, especially for us, and on the East Coast, very, very densely populated cities. Right now, half of the world lives in an urban environment. Over the next few decades, that's expected to rise to 70%. So we're losing more and more of our environment and nature. But to bring it back to our generation a bit and tie this all together, more than half of the U.S. population suffers from mental illnesses. I think that it's fair to say that we've seen a rise in mental illnesses for our generation. I know that's definitely touched my life. I'm sure it's touched your life a little bit, as far as maybe not yourself, but people you know. I think a lot of it has to do with the outlook of the future, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this a little bit. With mental health issues, the sort of society's path towards destruction with the climate crisis, what's your outlook on the future, just broadly?
Well, I think things need to change. I mean, just in regards to what you spoke about with the exponential rise of social media, and I think technology, people being glued to their phones, and especially Instagram, and people seeing all these pictures of luxury and people with perfect bodies, and half the people are you'll never even meet, but it's created this pressure to try to be like that, to try to be your perfect self every day. And now with the fact that
online.
and now with the fact that it seems like life doesn't slow down, it only gets faster. Go to work, come home. If you have time to work out, like that's so many people don't even have time to try to get workout, exercise in nowadays. Plus, to be able to go outside, connect with nature, like the natural serotonin you get just from going outside and having the sun shine on you. A lot of people don't even have time, it feels like, to do that, and they don't put the emphasis on doing that. And I think that's a big reason for a lot of mental illnesses that you said, the rise of it, whether it's dissociative disorders, anxiety, bipolar, depression, all that stuff, I feel like is a result of how fast we've grown accustomed to living and feeling like we have no downtime
and how
anymore.
Attached we've gotten to technology overall. I mean, it's not the way human beings evolved. We evolved in nature. We didn't evolve with these screens. I mean, me and you are staring at two screens right now. We have the phones in our hands. We have the TV in the living room. It's not the way that we grew up as a species. We grew up hunting and gathering. To go a little farther, we grew up with agriculture. Go way back, we grew up on the plains of Africa. It doesn't lend itself well to the innate nature of mankind. So, again, going back to the outlook on the future, our generation particularly is having a tough time staring down the face of a global climate crisis. And I got a stat for you here. You can tell me whether or not this pertains to you. You can tell me if it doesn't. I have a feeling that it doesn't really, but 45% of 18 to 35-year-olds, so we're smack dab in the middle of that generation, don't see a point in saving for the future, which concerns me greatly, right? Especially in the field I'm in. It seems as like an example of just the absolute bleak outlook that we have as a people.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's doom and gloom for a lot of people. It's one, why should I care?
Yeah.
For you obviously do, but for most people like me whose job is in sports broadcasting, why should I care? You ask that question of everybody. Why should you care about wanting to save the earth? Why should you care about 100 years from now? You won't be alive. Who cares? Leave it to the next generation. And I think that's
the next generation is just an extension of ourselves.
exactly, and that's going to be our kids and our grandkids for millions of us. So I think that is.
Me and you have nephews, and I have a newborn niece. I mean, what is the world going to look like when she's our age?
And I think that's the question that hundreds of millions of people ask themselves every day, and I think that is hopefully a call to action that we need to have upon ourselves. It's leaving the earth for our future generations, and being selfless in that regard, not being selfish and using up all of the earth's resources, using up all of the fossil fuels, driving everywhere when you could ride a bike or you could walk or run somewhere, and just getting back to I think a more basic lifestyle any which way we can. It doesn't have to be a dramatic change, right? If you have a 30-minute drive to work, you're not going to ride a bike and take 2 hours and leave 6 in the morning, especially during the summer, and sweat your ass off. But
you can invest in high-speed domestic travel, though.
Exactly. And just reducing our carbon footprint any which way we can, I think is small steps that every single one of us can contribute to.
But do we do it as a way to save ourselves, or do it with the idea of a more profound respect for nature in mind? Because I feel like a lot of the policy and a lot of the direction that this is going is more so we have to save ourselves, not more so look at what we've done to this planet we call home.
Yeah, and I think again, I think it begs the question, why should you care? And I know one of the criticisms of the Deep Ecology platform is that it places more value on the ecological system than human beings. But at the same time, again, humans, I think, act off of incentives. And, I think if we can reduce our carbon footprint any which way we can, really invest in ecology, not just for ourselves, but non-human forms, animals, and
see ourselves as a part of that and not rising above it.
Yeah, and acting on incentives, I think it would reduce the daily cost of living.
Yeah, I mean, we're just so driven by monetary incentives, not the understanding that we are a place, we have our place in this world, and that everything works in tandem with each other. I mean, it reminds me of that Bo Burnham song, How the World Works, right? The secret is the world can only work when everything works together. So, to tie this all up, can a deeper connection with nature solve this, do you feel? I mean, obviously, a Deep Ecology platform believes that it can. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. Can going back to our roots and our connections with nature, and that in turn helping to solve the climate crisis, help us have a better outlook on the future?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it goes back to me, the two biggest points. The one that you brought up about how basically half of the people in our generation suffer from some kind of mental illness. I think, again, if there's studies...
It's half the U.S. population total.
Yeah, and I know there's studies out there, but again, just realizing that... being exposed to sunlight and exercising and going outside and taking walks and visiting parks, as simple as it may sound, increased levels of serotonin, increased mental health. And then the other thing is, if everybody's, getting back to those roots, like you said, and not driving so much, not driving everywhere, using less, fossil fuels. Obviously, we don't have control over that outside of really driving, but as a society, it reduces the cost of living. Gas isn't going to cost $4.75 like it does now. It's not going to be so expensive to use everyday items and everyday activities like it used to be. So increase mental health and reduce the cost of living, I think, are the two main goals.
Yeah, and I think with that increase in mental health, it also allows you to connect more and have a, like you said, care more about the nature that you are experiencing right there. Instead of being in an apartment on your phone all the time, you go out and you walk through a forest or a park, and you start to reflect a little bit more on the human connection with nature and our our part in it and our responsibility to protect it as the most intelligent animals on the planet. All right, I think we can kind of wrap it up there, Patty. I appreciate your time and your help on this. This has been a fun little project that we did together. It's been years, so I'm glad to have you back on the school project, man.
Yeah, hopefully I'll be invited back for more.
Yeah, probably not. All right, thanks, guys.